Alright, welcome back again. This is our second part of 6. We are still working on Secretariat. We are doing his muzzle. For the muzzle, I went ahead and I mapped out a lot of the very soft edges. Muzzles are very soft, they're not very hard unless they got mud or food stuck to them. Or they're frozen, you know how they be. So again, just like in the last part, just want to watch where all of the fur directions go. A lot of the muzzle, like the muzzles have fur on them. They're very light fur. So they're very soft. It's not it's not like fat or flubber. Now, like the lower chin, like the lip area, usually has way less fur on it, or like the little really tiny hair follicles. I don't know what the term is. I also did not see a lot of whiskers sticking out on his muzzle, so you guys could definitely add whiskers if you want. I prefer the look without the whiskers. So unless the horse predominantly really had whiskers on there, I'm probably really gonna add like a very light whiskers on him. But I mean, he might have been they might have shaved him. So anyway, so with the nostrils, this is the one struggle I had, was trusting the process on this part. And because in the picture, like when I drew this out, one nostril was a little bit lower than the other one. They weren't perfectly straight across from each other, but like when you're kind of drawing it in your brain's like, no, it needs to be symmetrical, and it's like, but it's not. It's not supposed to be, because once you finish all the coloring around like the nostrils there in front of the lower and side, it will look correct. You just gotta keep going. So that was one of the struggles that I had with doing the muzzle. The next part is making sure that I don't go too thick on layering the fur. Oh, sorry, adjusting my mic. So we don't want long furs down the nose unless the breed, or unless like that specific horse has long facial hairs down through his nose. Some do. Some have little stashes on their muzzle, but this one does not. And just paying attention to how the light reflects on the outside. So there's that reflective light that will usually show on the underside of objects and on the backside of objects, because usually there's a light source that's bouncing off of another source that's then reflecting back on to said subject. So whether it could be the sky, it could be the ground, can be reflective, not very, but it can. It, like, sometimes there's like a green hue or a blue hue, even dirt. So it's all very it's in perspective to what you want. So again, just using the reference photos, lighting to help make a more realistic drawing. You'll see me bring out the purple. Purple is a good in-between, like if you don't want to use indigo, if you don't want a blue horse, but you also don't want a purple horse. Usually I bring out purple for the reds, and then I'll bring out the blues for like a darker color horses to help with the vibrance of the color. So a lot of times blacks can be very flat. So you just want to be careful. So like for the nostril, for example, and I'm sorry if I time skipped a little bit. Again, I'm trying to save space on my poor little computer for all of this. And I think I had probably did an evening where I didn't record. So basically I just smoothed a lot of things out with my mineral spirits, and I'm going back in layering with some of my little mid-tone colors. So I have some oranges, some grays in there, and a little bit of that lighter color. I forget what it's called. Beige or something, I believe. And okay, so for the nostrils, inside the nostrils, I do use black, but I use that Payne's gray, I think is what it's called. and I have two different colors of black, which I know that might not make sense to a lot of you, but some of the different brands, when they make their black, sometimes it's a little bit more blue, sometimes it's a little bit more brown or red. So just test your black. If you feel that you can't tell, then whichever one is more comfortable for you. So I know that the Derwent Chroma Flow is a little bit more muted in the retrospect, that it feels more kind of brownish black, whereas the Prismacolor feels on the cooler side, so that it feels like it has maybe a little bit more blue in it. So I use the Chroma Flow first before I use that one on this drawing. I do use mineral spirits to help pigment the nostrils in there, so I don't have to cram my colored pencil down to get that black look. So depending on how you do your colored pencil style, so like I really enjoy making the colored pencils kind of look like a painting, but you still get that colored pencil look. There are those who don't use the mineral spirits and take a little bit extra time and can get their drawing really nice with just colored pencils. And that's the next challenge I would want to do for myself after this, is like do maybe smaller drawings and try that. But I kind of want to try it on a different type of paper that might be better suited for that. Like an actual like colored pencil paper, not the mixed media paper. But I've gotten so used to this, and I feel like I just know how this paper works. And there's a part of me that's a little iffy about using a different kind of paper. I've looked into the pastel mat, and I don't know if I want to spend the money on pastel mat to try, because it would be kind of cool to like be able to layer a little bit of your lighter colors on top, or to kind of get that softer texture. But I don't feel like spending that money. Oh, excuse me. Spending that money to just be able to do something I kind of know how to do on the mixed media paper. But once I get my own art room established, I'll have an array of things to try. I definitely want to get back into like more watercolor. I want to start painting. I want to do acrylic painting, maybe oil painting. Could you imagine like knowing the skills I have now with the colored pencil and the patience I have? If I can get really good at oil painting, I know they're two completely separate mediums, but I just think that'd be so cool. Like, I'm so detail orientated. I feel like I could just. I've done a couple oil paintings, but not like projects of oil paintings. Does it make sense? Like, some people are like, oh yeah, I draw, but like they've never done like a project for drawing. You know what I mean? So, anyway, so this muzzle took quite a while. Just going back in, finishing some touch-up areas. You might see me go back in here and there to fill in maybe a little bit of the gaps. But this muzzle, he had a lot of like shine on it from one way, so we'll see how it goes. I got the chain on there. When you do any kind of like golden chain, don't just use yellow. There could be greens, browns, blues, reds, it's just depending on what's reflective on it. I primarily used a dark umber, the cream color, that goldenrod, and actually I had a bronze. That bronze color helps a lot when you're doing like the gold chains or any kind of gold metallic surface. And then just pay attention to your highlights. Don't make the chains too complicated. Don't forget, our brains also help play a role in enhancing realism in artwork, because like if you've seen a horse, you know what a horse is supposed to look like. So you look at an artwork and like you know it's art, but your brain can't help but fill in the missing gaps that might be there, which is kind of cool. So, but we as artists do our best to portray what we see in our mind onto paper, how we perceive it, or our skill levels at that time. We should be getting close to starting the halter. So with the halter, in the first reference photo, it was his blue and white halter, and my other two horses have their leather halters on in their reference photos. I do have a picture of him, Secretariat, in his leather halter, but I had already mapped out for his nylon halter instead of his leather halter. His leather halter is maybe a little bit thicker, but I used that color to help make my own leather halter, and I felt like I was turning into a real artist, trying to use two different reference photos to kind of change something to make it my own. So felt pretty proud when I got done with this. I took my time on the first one, make sure I got all the colors that I wanted. And then once I got that, the other parts were very fast, very easy because I knew exactly how I wanted to do it. So sometimes your first go around might be a little bit slower than your next couple ones. Okay, so the only tricky part with this was, so you saw I brought out my stump and I probably used mineral spirits on that. So I didn't want, sometimes your paintbrushes, the paintbrushes don't mix like how I want on, like for fur, they work really well. But like on a smooth surface, it just depends on your paintbrush. And I know how these paintbrushes work, and I didn't want that look on my noseband here. So I was trying to think of a way that I could blend this without taking forever. But the stump tool, every time I use it, it always picked up a lot of pigment. I didn't want that. I wanted it to just like spread the pigment around on the paper, not pick it up and lift it off the paper. So I found another paintbrush that I typically use for my watercolors, and it was like that flat, not the fan. It was kind of like a square shape, but it's like thin, if that makes sense. I am not a paintbrush expert, so I apologize if I am saying these wrong. If anyone might know what it is, please inform us all. But so I started using that, and that seemed to help a lot better than my smaller ones. Sorry, I'm adjusting my mic. It keeps slowly sliding away from me. Every time I go to itch my nose, it boops away. Okay, so the trick to do the little stitching, remember how I said in the last part where if you layer enough on the light underneath, and once you use your mineral spirits, that sets into the paper? Well, it's because that set into the paper, once I put the other layers on top, when I went to go scrape away the lighter layers, sorry, the top layers that were dark, my lighter layers underneath showed. So I had little stitching that I made, and those are not the same stitching on his halter in the one reference photo. So I kind of just, I know what leather halters are. I kind of have an understanding of what they can look like and what I can make them look realistic just for this drawing. So that's what I did. I didn't want to overdo it. I didn't want the stitching to be the main focus of this drawing. So I just wanted to give like a hint, like, oh, the stitching, oh, da da da, like, oh, that's a leather halter. Like that's all I want. I didn't want to be like, oh my gosh, she got every single stitch on there. Nah, that was not my goal. Next challenge. You guys ready? Is the nameplate. I had a couple times I had to erase. It's only because that when the colored pencils try to, like, when you try to, like, because, like, you're not writing the word on the plate was stamped in. So I have not had enough practice or time in my brain to, like, have formulated a good way to go about this. And I hope that showing you my struggle will let you know that you're not the only one that struggles with things, especially nameplates. The other thing too is that when the nameplates get so small, there's only so much tiny writing I can do, especially with a colored pencil. So I wish I could go back and look at it as if I'm just drawing the shadows of the imprints and not actually writing his name on there. Does that make sense? So if you guys ever do a nameplate, and that's like the lettering is like completely like solid, because this one wasn't really solid. Does that make sense? Like it was stamped, like there is like printing on it, but it's still beveled, just a hair. And I just couldn't, in my brain, get it. And I also apologize. I thought I went through and edited some of those blackouts and some of the weird wording that pops up on my videos. It took forever to kind of scrub through 40 hours of video, so just bear with me if you accidentally see one of those pop up here and there. I might have missed a couple. So I know that I have a technique that can back me up, and I just got a little frustrated with this. So there's the first erase, going back in, trying to write it out, and my brain's like trying to get it. And I was like, you know what? I just need to kind of finish some of the leather. Let me move on to something else, and then I'll come back. So I didn't want it to be perfect. I just wanted to have just enough kind of like on there. It's still kind of artsy. To me, it's a little goofy, but his play, at least I got the name on there. So at least someone can be like, oh, that's the Secretariat. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because you have to also think that the wording it's not directly facing us. It's slanted. It's a little bit forwards to backwards angled, and I just couldn't wrap my head around how to do that. And I didn't want to make too many guide marks that I couldn't erase later. So I slightly freehanded it. I think it didn't turn out too bad. Could it have been better? I feel so. Next time when I do one freehand, I now have this experience in my pocket to do one. So, and plus this is my drawing, so no, this is mine. No one else is taking it home. It is mine. I'm gonna hang it up somewhere in my new home, and I have to pay for the framing. Ay ay ay. And same thing with this other strap here. Very simple, very easy. And then I do the gold attachment here. This is not the same gold this is the gold attachment that was on the first halter, not on the leather halter. So I had to make it work for what I had. You know, I was thinking, I was like, I would not probably see, typically leather halters, you see just round connectors, because you can't, a lot of the halters are, the leather's thick, and you can't really squeeze it or wrap it very well through the thin hooks on that cheek piece there. So it's kind of believable, but for a horse person, honestly, if I saw that, I'd be questioning just a little bit, like, dang, that must be a thin leather halter. Well, I'm not drawing, it is. In real life, probably it would be really thick and probably uncomfortable for the horse to wear. So the other thing I felt like I did a really good job was showing that the halter's like actually like on his face. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's like a slight tugging at the cheek piece there. And I feel like I was like, okay, that actually looks really cool. So same thing with the cheek. Don't forget, I know like I repeat myself a lot, but once you find your technique for some of these areas, you're going to rinse and repeat it. The only challenging part about when you add color to things is the color. So getting your hues, values, the shaping correct that you want, and your saturation. The saturation will come. Don't worry about plastering color on there. If you end up like not using mineral spirits and you like that more kind of more textured colored pencil look, it's going to take a little bit longer if you want a more pigmented drawing. But there are some really good drawings out there that aren't heavily pigmented. So just find what works best for you. And now I have the hiccups. Excuse me. I gotta drink some water. Oh, okay, they're gone. Okay, so the ear. I only do this one ear. I don't do the second ear, trying to save some time and space. I mean, like I finish it, I just don't record it. Okay, so this ear, I was having trouble to seeing if they shaved it out or if they left it fluffy. I left it fluffy because I wasn't sure, because it's hard to add the fluff back in. But I can always like kind of go in and smooth it out later if I want to make it like a smooth inner ear. So I'm just going to assume that they never trimmed the inside of his ears. I mean, what, he raced till he was 5, 7, something? there was probably no need. There's like no need. It's a windbreaker too for the ears. So I made them fluffy. For the ears, I mapped out in that light cream color. You got a theme going on here, right? Light cream color, and then I went in with the hard wax Prismacolor pencils, the dark umber, and it is definitely lighter than the regular dark umber. So I honestly just call that like the regular brown. And I went through and I mapped out where I wanted uh, some of the clumps of fur that I could kind of see on the uh, old photo I had, and then just layering in with the red, pumpkin orange, the dark umber. Once I got all of those on, then I went in with a little bit of my black, and then once the mineral spirit set in, I went and just touched up some of the like the tips of the ears and a little bit more texture here and there. As we kind of get towards the end of this video, I wanted to explain how I did the neck area because you will not see the whole end of it. So I'll finish the ear and then I do the second one, and then I go on and I map out his mane, and it is not 110% perfect like the photo, but it is well enough that we understand that he has a mane, if that makes sense. And it's choppy because they literally probably took scissors to it, and the wind had kind of blew some of it over, so it's just chopped up on the side of his mane there. For the base of the neck, I use that cream. I actually used peach, a little bit of a peach color, and I kept layering, and then you have to, once you get to a certain point, you gotta let the mineral spirits dry, because otherwise you're just smearing the colors, and I didn't want that. So I let it dry, come back, let it dry, and in the photo I have at the end here, you'll be able to see that I finished up putting all those darks in, and I put the hint of blue highlight on the bottom side of his chin, cheek, halter, and his throat latch, his throat area underneath there. So you'll see that, so that you can see the texture and the form, like there's a mass there. So I'm gonna let this video play out, and I hope you guys have questions. Please leave them down in the comments. I will do my best to answer them to my professional ability, quote unquote. And if you guys would like picture updates or anything, just follow me on Facebook, CJG Fine Art, Cassie Jo Grimes Fine Art on Facebook. It'd be a big help. And don't forget, subscribing on YouTube is free. It does not cost you anything. Same thing with following on Facebook. Gotta do those plugins when I can. Anyway, hope you guys have fun making art, and I will catch you on part 3. It will be a couple weeks before that video comes out. And I'll see you then. Alright, bye guys.